Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Super Bowl 55 came and went, and it was a T. Heine whipping, man. You're watching that unfold on Sunday. What are you thinking?
No, they didn't get beat. They got beat up.
Yeah, man.
I mean, on both sides. And it wasn't close. We had a small group of people here. We were watching the game. At halftime, it was, well, listen, Mahomes has been in this spot before. They're going to come back and win. I'm like, I don't know if he's been in this spot. I knew at halftime it was kind of game, set, and match. They could not match up. Again, as much as we talk about people, on the edges and the receivers and tight ends and all, man, isn't it a game still won in the trenches?
It is a big man's game. You say it often.
And man, listen, that part, you'll have a lot of things change in the football world, but if you don't win up front, you got no shot. And I just think about it, the most remarkable thing, with watching what I watched all year with the Bucs, and we knew they were a talented team. It just was, could it come together? And we saw it in an eight-week run that it was unbelievable. But Tom Brady laid his hands on a bad football team, bad organization, and got them to the Super Bowl. It's not that they didn't have talent before, but he was able to transform that talent into winning. That's difficult. What was 07 the last time they had been to the playoffs?
Right.
They hadn't won a playoff game since 2002. Okay, they had went through a number of different people that they thought was going to be the guy. And it was Brady that came in and did it. And I give Jason a lot of credit as GM because I know him a little well. He was a hit the trail type scout for a long time. And it takes a lot, Matt, I think, for a GM. And in the off season, basically the meeting of the minds with him and Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich to say, okay, we've went this far with Jameis Winston. We have to move on. It's not working here with him with us now, so we have to move on. The big problem becomes, okay, go find somebody that's better. In the back of your mind, when Brady's deal with New England sort of fell apart, I think it just became a bad relationship, a bad marriage, and then it became the divorce with him and Belichick. Did you really think, first thing, Tampa?
No. So much of the conversation, Mike, wasn't it San Francisco? It was Denver, Arizona?
The Chargers?
Yeah.
Because you think about L.A. and where he came from, where he grew up, and the Chargers are looking to sell tickets. And, he's from Southern California, made all the sense in the world. The Titans, because his relationship with Mike Rabel, played with the Patriots. They were part of it. But, man, it was Jason to get on that phone and call and say, hey, listen, we need you here. I like to heard that sell job because, okay, what do you have to kind of convince me that I'm going there? And then when you look at the roster and you see what was returning in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and a Cameron Brayton and O.J. Godwin, you knew you were going to have to pick an offensive lineman, but you had 4 guys returning. Defensively, you had the setup there because from the year before, 10 of the 11 starters returned. The only new guy was Antoine Winfield Jr., who they picked in round 2. They had bits and pieces of it, but they needed somebody to change the culture, to show how to win. And Brady was able to do it. But then on the other part, you got to be flexible. And I think that's the part that was the most impressive thing about the run, that Jason was able to say, okay, I know when Brady comes here, he's going to also want to be part-time general manager. And I got to give him a little bit of leeway there. And it was certainly Brady who convinced him to make the trade and to get Gronkowski. And Gronk was going to come out of the wrestling world, but you had to make the trade first with the Patriots. And then it was Antonio Brown. Okay, sell me that part on Antonio Brown. But Brady had great trust in him. Then when Leonard got cut loose, it was Brady on that phone. hey, Leonard, come play with us, in Tampa. And, man, a lot of GMs would have bucked with that. Matt, just think about in the real world to say that a boss is going to hire an employee and that guy's going to tell him what to do sometimes. That don't happen, right? He might give a suggestion, and if he's asked, he might answer the question. But it's rare in this world. And then I thought the best comment after the game was Bruce Arians is like, man, listen, I'll let Byron coach the offense. I'll let Todd Bowles go to defense. I just get the hell out of the way. And in many ways, that's true. He's the CEO, but he lets his coaches coach. But, man, that critical decision that you went after Brady and kind of similar to what we've seen with New Orleans for years, in getting veteran players and sort of shoving all those chips in and say, you know what, we're going to do it this way, and let's see if it works. And it took a little while, but boy, it finally came together. And arguably, they did it for a long portion of the season without a guy that most people in that organization feel was their best defensive player.
Vita Vea.
And Vita Vea.
Yep.
And so, man, you were lucky you got healthy and you got hot late, but you just beat up the Chiefs. And they didn't. When you settle for those 2 field goals early, I knew that was it. It almost was like reminiscent of watching the Saints game against the Bucs.
Yep.
Okay, you got field position, you got chances, and then all of a sudden, you 6-0, and people, but we got points on the board. What? A touchdown erases all of that. And you could see it. Pressure break the pipe, though, on Mahomes. He was running for his life on every play. But Todd Bowles, in my opinion, he was the MVP because he threw something at Mahomes that was totally different from game one. We talked about it last week where it was a lot of man coverage in the first half. And my thing is, what are you doing? You got to give him some help with Tyreek Hill. You can't have Colton Davis on him one-on-one all game long. And then when you watched it, you saw it was bracket coverage. They did a lot of two-zone attack. They basically sort of said, okay, if you're going to throw it underneath, and we're going to attack the guy who catches it. And they never adjusted to any of that. They didn't play a lot of dime coverage during the year, but you saw in that game, they at times were playing dime coverage against Mahomes. So, man, Todd Bowles had a great game plan, absolutely great game plan. And that offensive line, you threw for 201 yards, and you rushed for over 140. So it wasn't like those stats are staggering, but they didn't commit the turnovers. They made plays when they had to. And other than the Washington game, did you really see Tom Brady get hit in the playoffs?
No.
And listen, we're not talking about, like Brady's a runner by any stretch. Their offensive line really, I think, was the most inherited part of that group because that wasn't like that early, especially on the left side with Donovan Smith, who got turned up. Man, Trey Hendrickson turned him around like a turnstile. When they played him in the regular season, Donovan Smith really played well down the stretch, and you saw at times it would keep Gronk in and help, but they almost took that copy of what the Patriots had done to win and just flipped it over and said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to run the football. We're going to throw the short pass to the receivers. We're going to get the tight ends more involved. We're not going to put the ball up for grabs, and we're going to play great defense. And, man, that's exactly what they did. So the shocking part was the margin of victory because it was a no-sweat game. If you picked the Bucs at halftime, you knew you had that game won.
That was a rocking chair cover, Mike. I cashed that ticket early, man.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, no matter what, it wasn't going to be a shootout. And, the TV people, they're like, I'll be damned.
Tony Romo kept begging for it to be a game.
Come on, man, make it be a game.
They're going to do it, Jim. This is where you got to go get points. And no, Tony, it's over, bro.
And it's to keep the people's watching. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's keep people watching. And to the end, and you thought maybe it would be a really tight game between the two gunslingers. and it ended up being totally different from that. And I give Pat Mahomes a lot of credit. I think he's taken a lot of criticism that's unjust with him. You can't throw the football well when you're running for your life. And he made a couple throws, one early in the game to Tyreek Hill that went right through his hands and bumped him in the helmet.
Yep.
A third down conversion. Travis Kelce's open over the middle. He hits him in a bad place, right between the hands, and he drops it.
Mm-hmm.
Late in the game, not that it really mattered, but he hit Darrell Williams.
Yep.
Right
Same thing.
smack dab
right
in the hands.
Right in the face mask, yep.
And blang, again, he hit a boink twice. Like, come on, you got to help your quarterback out here. You know, he's fighting for his life. And, again, I think Richie Pettibone told me this years ago. He said, Mike, if you have a weakness come Super Bowl Sunday, they have so much game tape on you. You break it down so much that they're going to exploit that. And you got 2 weeks to take a really good look at it. So he said, it's not like a regular season game where, you know, you got a few days and everything else. You got a long time to take a look at it. And the weakness you saw in the Chiefs was up front. And that's nothing you could have done about you lose Mitchell Schwartz, your right tackle, and then bang, you lose your left tackle. And then you start switching guys around. And, boy, when I saw that, I was like, yeah. The Chiefs are in trouble today. When you start moving one guy from one position to the next, I think you screw up the other positions, too.
Everybody on this Tampa team says they expect to be back next year. They got $38 million in cap space. Mike, is this just beginning for Tampa in the NFC South?
Well, I've heard this story before.
Okay.
You win the Super Bowl and you say, I'm coming back and I'm willing to take a pay cut until that first contract comes in that pays you a lot more.
Okay.
And you say,
good.
Okay.
Mike, I'm grinning ear to ear, man. I love this. I love where this is going.
You know, that's always the challenge when you're the Super Bowl champ. I heard Bill Belichick talk about this, that, you know, players tell you just about anything in the moments after a Super Bowl and the day after the Super Bowl. But then when they get with their agents and their lawyers, it's like, hey, we got a chance to really cash in here. Let's do it. So that's the big challenge for the Bucs. They do have money, and so they can kind of maneuver around a little bit, which is unusual for a Super Bowl champ.
Right.
Because most of the time, like that, when the Patriots were winning, they were right up against the salary cap almost every year, and they were having to do maneuvers. But they got cash to spend, and certainly on defense, it's Levante David. They want him back. He's a really good football player. He makes a great tandem with Devin White.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what are you going to do with Shaq Barrett? Because Shaq is going to want a tremendous amount of money as an edge pass rusher. There aren't a lot of those. And you got him at a really cheap price when you got him from Denver because he really hadn't done anything there. Now, all of a sudden, if you were really to vote for the most dominant player of that game, wasn't it Shaq Barrett? I mean, to me, Shaq, he was more in the Kansas City backfield than Clyde Edwards-Helaire was. Every play, he was there. And so you're going to have to pay him. It'll be interesting to see because Gronk has already said that if he plays, it's going to be, you know, with the Bucs. And so I get that. He's tied to Brady on that particular deal. What will happen with Leonard and what's going to happen with Antonio Brown, I think are the big pieces there. And do they decide maybe not to take as much to stay with what they got? Brady again now becomes the recruiter and assistant general manager and assistant head coach. So he puts on all the hats again. But this is a really talented team, especially on defense. They have a few places here and there. Money for Chris Godwin, man, that's going to be quite pricey for what Chris is going to ask for. He's going to ask for a lot of money this offseason. So do they have a real shot to get back? Yeah, they're going to be really talented. But there are always some issues with players there that you're going to have to financially work out. And I think certainly on defense is to try to get Barrett and Levante David back. And on offense, just for me, I think Gronk's not going to be a huge money issue. it's going to be the big money issue for them is going to be Chris Godwin because out on the open market, he's going to get a ton of money.
Man, God, they just got so many receivers, especially if Antonio Brown's back in whatever capacity he may be. But Mike, let's sort of take an assessment of the rest of the South and how they match up with Tampa, assuming what we just went through, they get most of the guys back. And I mean, I guess we can obviously start with New Orleans and how they match up moving forward.
Well, I'll throw it to defense first.
Okay.
For the Saints, when you look at it on paper, it's going to be really difficult to bring Trey Hendrickson back because of the finances involved here. And he's going to be elsewhere. I think of all the big-name guys, if it's Hendrickson, if it's Sheldon Rankins, if it's Marcus Williams, Marcus has got probably the best chance to come back. Knowing the way the coaching staff has talked about him, how they value him in the secondary. Now, some people might not agree with that, but you're not paying him. They are. So, that's in every profession, but I really think looking at how they feel about him, I think Williams has got the best chance to return on the defensive side of football, though you have some depth along the defensive line. And I know on the coaches show, Coach Payton has talked highly of Carl Granderson as a guy that he thinks can be a really good football player in this league. So when you look at it, to me, the one area that sticks out is that corner. You've got a young Marshawn Lattimore who's looking for a new deal. But look the age of Janoris Jenkins and Patrick Robinson. You're going to have to go out, I think, and double do this and get a veteran free agent and an early round pick corner. Bottom line, I mean, you can't. That's difficult. With Jenkins, what type of deal you can make with him? I don't know. I'm not involved with the finance part, but that to me is the area that I would be concerned about on defense because of the age part. And you're playing nickel. I think it's 77% of the time, Dennis Allen told us. And they're in dime, like right at 70. So you 3/4 of a starter in the dime packages, which P.J. Williams is involved with. And guess who's a free agent too?
Yeah.
And you think about Aaron Glenn going to Detroit. Come play. Hey, man, our coach, you come play with us out here in Detroit, and we're going to pay you more money. So that, to me, is the area on the defensive side of the football to watch. Linebacker-wise, you got one really good one and a great one in Demario Davis. You would love to bring Quan back, but not at that price. Can you work out a deal with him? They still have high hopes for Zach Bond, but it was obvious. We talked about it when they picked him. All this nonsense about he's the complete linebacker. He's never been that type of guy at Wisconsin. Come on, he's a former quarterback that was an edge pass rusher. That's what he did at Wisconsin. He wasn't used to being in the coverage part of the game. If that was the case, they would have played him that way. So and he didn't have no rookie camp, no OTA, so I get it. It was a difficult transition, but I think they like him a lot. Linebacker would be certainly cornerbacks are one, linebackers are two, because I want another athletic guy. I think a great fit player for this team, if they could get him, would be Jabril Cox. Wouldn't he be a great fit? Because of his athleticism, his ability to run the field, he's played multiple positions in college. He can drop back in the coverage part of the game. And I just think that as we get closer to draft day, where most people have him rated as a third-round pick, Matt, I'm telling you, I think you'll end up in round 2 because of supply and demand and need. And when you watch him drop into the coverage part of the game, he does that very well. And so he is going to be a mover as it gets closer to the draft. Now, NFL teams won't tell you, only because they don't want to kind of leak out what they're thinking of. I think Jabril becomes the guy that maybe makes a little bit of a run here and kicks himself up into round 2 because he is what you were looking for at linebacker today. If you don't want a pass rusher as a 3-4 team, you want a guy that can run the field east-west. You want a guy that can drop back in coverage. And that's what you got with Cox. And it's almost he's a little bigger than Chris Jones Jr., but that isn't when watching Chris Jones Jr. or Mike Jones Jr. come in from Clemson, Mike is very similar. He's not quite as tall. He's built a little bit differently than Cox, but they have similar features in what they do well: ability to run the field, they flow to the action linebacker, and a guy that can drop back in coverage. That's what the NFL is looking for today. So for the Saints, it would certainly be cornerback, linebacker, and on offense, certainly the huge position is at quarterback. And how Sean Payton now has to become recruiter again, because for the last few years, he has told everyone, my next quarterback is in the room, meaning Taysom Hill. Okay? Now, man, if you listen to the interviews, he's almost recruiting Jameis Winston, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm Jameis's people and I sit there and said, okay, what do you have to offer us? And they give the financial deal, and maybe Jameis will say, hey, listen, I want to be here. I believe in Sean. I believe in that system. But if I'm the agent, which many of them, all they're looking for is where they can get the best deal, because their percentage comes out of the best deal. They'll say, wait a minute, though, Coach, haven't you told everybody that Taysom is your guy? Now what happens? Now, Sean can flip that and say, listen, I was telling everybody that when Jameis wasn't here. He can sort of flip the pancake and say, well, listen, Winston wasn't on our football team. That's why I said it. And I think Jameis is the guy. So you make that choice, and it's tough. It's tough to follow somebody like Drew. People are used to that consistency week to week to week. And the one thing with Jameis, he's got physically what you're looking for, in that he's a big man. He's got a rifle for an arm. He can put tight window throws in there that very few people can. He really works hard at his game. Everybody that's been around him has made that comment. He really works hard at it. But the two parts about it is accuracy skills from week to week and anticipation skills. And that is what separates a quarterback that'll win you 9 games and a quarterback that'll win you 13 games. Not turning the football over with, knowing where to go with the football at crucial times, that sort of thing. And so I got told this by Gay Culverhouse, who her dad owned the team with the Bucs, sold it. She was the president of the team. She was involved in the league affairs, very close, certainly to the Glazer family, knew Bruce and Jason and the whole group in Tampa Bay. And she made the comment to me before she passed away in the summer, was that, who Jameis reminds me so much of, we had him here, and that was Vinny Testaverde. And she said, Mike, when you look back, Vinny was sort of built that way. He was a big man quarterback. He had a strong arm. He could make all the throws. He worked at his game. But there always were moments in which you said, good Lord, look at that throw. That's so impressive. And then he makes some throws you say, good Lord, what the hell was he thinking of? And she said, we cut him loose, and guess what? He started for 6 other teams in the NFL. Everybody thought they were Dr. Phil, that I can cure Vinny of those mistakes. And she said, I just think that that's what you have with Jameis, that he'll make some throws that you say, good gracious, that's so impressive. And then other throws you say, oh, Lord, what was he thinking of? And she said, you know what? Vinny did the exact same thing with us. And when we cut him loose, he did the exact same thing with other teams. But it's funny, who he had his most success with?
The Jets.
The Jets and Bill Parcells. And guess who Sean Payton's, mentor is?
Yeah.
Is Bill Parcells. And I sort of think that's certainly where they're leaning at this point, would be to go with Jameis if they can get him under contract. Because, man, I'm just telling you, if this turns into a free agency thing, and the way things are around the NFL today with quarterbacks, that money is going to be much more than it is today.
Yeah.
Much, much more money. That's just the pattern that we're going through with veteran quarterbacks in the NFL, that you're going to have to pay up, and pay up big. And so it's going to be the challenge now, between now and the start of free agency. Can you come to terms with Winston, or does Winston's people say, okay, guys, I know what you're going to offer, but we want to sort of take a look around?
couple other quarterbacks that I wanted to delve into with you. Reports this week that there might be a blossoming trade market for Marcus Mariota. Are you buying that, and could that be a possibility for New Orleans?
Man, hell no. Marcus Mariota. I do pre and post game for the Titans. Okay, I've seen enough of Marcus Mariota. And listen, a really great guy off the field. Athletically, he's really special. But again, I've always questioned with Marcus his accuracy skills under pressure and his anticipation ability. It wasn't good, and with the Titans, just wasn't. And he makes Tannehill look like Tom Brady compared to him. They want to tell you about one game with Marcus. There's no way I'm giving up anything of value for Mariota. Now, again, would I have interest if I could get him for cheap? Yeah, maybe so, but he's not the guy that's going to be the savior for your football team. Man, who's ever doing that, and I'm sure it's his agent.
It's his agent, no doubt.
They work in overtime.
Mike, as his agent, or it's the Raiders trying to drum up a market to be able to get something for him before they cut him loose. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I sort of think it's agent-wise. Gruden thinks that he can rehab any quarterback and every quarterback. That's always been his deal. And I think if he could have talked Mark Davis into it, I really believe he would have tried to be a player for Brady. But from what I hear, Mark Davis didn't want to go that route. He wanted to give Derek every opportunity to be the guy. And so, that's coming from the Mariota camp. And listen, again, as far as a person, Marcus is a really good guy. He's very low-key. Mm-hmm. He's not this take-charge type leader guy that you would envision at the quarterback position. It's just that particular part about him under pressure and him making throws. He's made some of the worst throws I've ever seen, and his anticipation skills are bad. They really aren't good. And kind of where that guy comes out of that cut and that break, he's all over the board throwing the football.
Mike, another guy that I wanted to ask about is someone we've talked about on the show. If there's one quarterback in round one who might be available to the Saints where they could move up, it's very likely Mac Jones from Alabama. Is that something that might be on the Saints' radar, perhaps to make a move up in round one to take a guy like Jones if he's there in the teens, maybe around where they got Marcus Davenport?
Yeah, and it would be in that area because I think when it's all said and done with the 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10, then it's where will Mac fall. And so for the teams that maybe couldn't maneuver to get it, it's going to be a 17 to 21 area where Mac Jones is most likely going to end up being. So what you talked about at 19 makes a lot of sense. And I think he'd be a great fit. He's not a super mobile quarterback. We've seen that. He's not a runner. But he's got a way of maneuvering around heavy traffic, move a little bit left, a little bit right. Man, he hits that launch pad really good. And I like that as a quarterback, his ability to just step up and make the throw. I've seen some of the most ridiculous comments about Mac Jones, that he can't throw the deep ball real well. And my thing is, you ain't watched one game of Alabama football. Watch how he hits. Yes, he's played with top receivers, but he's hitting them in the hands, and they don't have a lot of adjustment to the football. They running with that free down feel. But what I talked about, what he grades the highest for me on is accuracy skills, anticipation of a route, and his judgment in throwing the football last year. And people say, well, he didn't make a signature throw. No, he makes them every week, signature throws. But he does it almost with a little bit of ease, and sort of spotlights on Devontae, and not taking anything away from Devontae or Jalen Waddle, but, he makes that throw right on target. And he's a guy that I don't know if he'll play year one, but I think in year two you'll see him play and be a starter in this league. And isn't some of the same comments negatively that were made about Joe Burrow are being made about Mac Jones? almost the exact thing. Now, Joe was a better runner, and that there's even no debate on that. As from a running skill standpoint, Joe take off running. Now, I was more concerned Joe getting the NFL. He'd take off running, and they clean his clock.
Happened a couple times.
What's that?
It happened a couple times.
Yeah, and Joe's a tough guy, but man, in the NFL, man, there's some really tough guys. It's not the internet fake guys. No, these are real guys that can hit you out in the field. And so, yes, Joe is a much more mobile quarterback than Mac Jones. But when you look at timing, anticipation, accuracy skills, making the right judgment and throwing the football, how many bad passes did you see Mac Jones make last year?
Not many. That's the thing, Mike. He was throwing to mostly open receivers, but you can't fault him for that, right?
No, you can't fault him for playing. No, just like you can't fault Joe Burrow for playing with Jefferson and Marshall and Jamar Chase. And, I hear a lot of this from LSU fans, and my thing is, wait. Who did Joe play with last year?
Yeah.
Okay? So if you're going to say, well, he's playing around great receivers, okay, Joe played with great receivers too. But, his judgment skills are really good throwing the football. He was a highly recruited quarterback, almost signed with Kentucky, and then here comes Saban, as he normally does. When somebody sort of pulled out of the commitment late, Saban train came rolling in, and then they snatched him away. And I didn't think I would see an offense run as efficient as I saw the 2019 LSU Tigers. I saw it last year with Alabama. And they had you beat every which way but loose. And then when you started to try to play coverage, he didn't force anything. He ran the football with that big back and Jay Harris. And you saw a lot of defenders making Olay moves trying to get out of the way. Man, listen, I don't want to tackle him. So Mac's a guy that's going to be the intrigue and where he goes. I think he's going to be a team's very early 20s pick. He would certainly fit here. But the narrative of, he's just a short, medium-range passer, you have not watched him play. Look all the deep throws he made downfield. Did somebody come in and throw the football for him? And he was hitting, if it wasn't Waddle, it was Devontae, Billingsley, you name them, all the way across the board. He was hitting those guys in stride, and there wasn't much around it. I mean, so you got to give him full credit with that. And again, man, bad passes, you can count them on four fingers that he maybe made last year. Now, that's going to be some incompletion. Something's not there. He's smart enough to throw it away and say, listen, I'm going to live to fight another day. I'm not going to take that chance. Well, some quarterbacks will say, I know I can get it in there. Mm-hmm. I know I can get it in that tight spot. And they put it in there and, it's going back the other way. And then he'll hear from little Nick after that about why you throw the ball that way.
Glenn Laurie asked Mike, what about trading Cam Jordan for a first-round pick and signing Trey Hendrickson?
Well, that ain't happening.
I didn't think so. Just needed you to say it. Mark Shelton, has Tom Brady created a blueprint that Aaron Rodgers will follow in the future?
I think Tom Brady has done a blueprint that's already been done by the Rams with Matt Stafford.
Okay.
Their deal is we think we one player away. If the Colts end up with Carson Wentz, their feeling is, hey, we one player away.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, it's a copycat league, and everybody's going to try to do a similar deal. What's interesting is the accumulation, we talked about a little bit last week, the accumulation of young talent at quarterback in the AFC, not so much in the NFC.
True. You nailed that last week.
They're going more with the veteran players. So I do think, to answer the question from Mark, I think that it's already been done. The Rams did it.
Let's jump into the Bayou Ford YouTube chat. Ask Mike, should the Saints make a run at Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott?
Carson Wentz, I'm going to say no. And the reasoning why is not the knee injury, but he's had a back injury that has really caused him some issues. And do I think he can be rehabbed? I think probably so, but I'm not giving up a ton for Carson, to be honest with you. The Cowboys have already said, Dak's their guy for this year. They'll probably put the franchise tag on it, and I think they'll try to work out a long-term deal. I would much prefer Dak than Carson Wentz. I know he's coming off, the broken ankle and stuff, but man, Wentz is back. I just think, Matt, when you have that, it stays with you. And you can see it's affected his mechanics, his movement skills, and you can't move around like you used to. And that would cause me a lot of concern with Carson Wentz.
Ask Mike, would Patrick Peterson be an upgrade over Janoris Jenkins?
Man, Patrick, you can see on the slide here of his career. While a once great dominant corner isn't quite the same. And last year, man, he was really grabby with receivers. It would just depend on what he's looking for, to be honest with you. I think at both stages of that career, Peterson's a little bit better player, but is it going to be that much more? And how much money are we talking about here? I do know a couple years back, the Saints did try to trade for Patrick. And even Sean Payton got involved in calling the owner of the Cardinals to say, hey, let's make this deal. Let's make it work. But, man, the last 2 years, he's really been disappointing. And last year, you could see he became a real grabby corner. And so the money's extravagant. I'm going to say pass.
Ask Mike, should the Saints make a call? There's a lot of quarterback questions. I'm trying to condense some of them. This one asks about, should they make a call about Russell Wilson, considering some of the rumors there in Seattle?
You better believe it. I'd be on that phone now. Financially, how that would all work, man, and I've said this before, the MVP of the offseason is going to be Kai Harley. There ain't nobody working overtime more than Kai. Because Kai puts in some work to redo those contracts and finagle it around, and him and Mickey work together on this. But, I would have tremendous interest in Russell Wilson. If that is true, and I actually think that there's something there. Russell Wilson says a lot about nothing in interviews. He never is critical of anything. And he ends every interview similar to Coach O. He ends it with "Go Hawks." And yet he took a swipe. So that tells me, isn't he trying to indicate to you, I want out of here, but I don't want to be the bad guy? And so, man, Russell Wilson, for me, he would be a yes.
Mike, we're flat out of time. I wanted to ask you about the COVID stuff, but I literally got 20 seconds, so maybe we'll do it next week, and we can complain about Goodell some more. You're the best, Mike. We appreciate you as always. Next week.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.